Welcome, the anointed ones. When a lie starts suffocating, it doesn't confess. It starts screaming. Chosen one. This is exactly the phase you've entered. A phase where the very people who swore they knew the real you are now confronting anybody who will listen, trying to force their narrative back to life like someone doing CPR on a cardboard cutout. And the wildest part? The harder they try to convince others, the more they accidentally confess that the story was never stable in the first place. There's a psychological fact researchers love to mention. People who lie about someone else subconsciously track the reactions of others more than the actual person they lied about. Why? Because deep down, the liar doesn't fear you. They fear the moment the audience realizes they made everything up. And right now, that realization is spreading like wildfire. That's why you're seeing this new behavior. The confronting, the cornering, the dramatic monologues delivered like they're auditioning for a role in a low-budget soap opera. They're approaching people with the frantic energy of someone who knows they're losing control of the room. Because they are. The truth they tried to bury didn't just survive. It grew roots, cracked the ground, and is now poking through their carefully constructed storyline like, "Surprise, sweetheart. Miss me? And let's keep it real." Some of them are confronting people not out of bravery, but because they know their credibility is circling the drain. They can feel the grip slipping, conversations shifting, people giving them side eyes, whispers forming behind their backs. Suddenly everyone is analyzing what they said about you, and nothing adds up. Their story has more plot holes than a movie that should have gone straight to DVD. So now they're scrambling, not to defend the truth, but to defend their reputation, their pride, and their comfort in being seen as the one who had you figured out. Because imagine the embarrassment, spending months or years painting you as a villain, only for people to look at you now and say, "Wait, that's who you were talking about." Phew. Humbling. This introduction isn't about exposing their lies. You already outgrew that chapter. This is about revealing why their behavior has suddenly escalated, why they're confronting people with jittery intensity, and why they're holding on to their story like it's the last slice of pizza at a family gathering. Hint, it's not about you anymore. It's about the collapse they're trying so hard to prevent. Let's dive into why the truth about you is surfacing, why they're losing their sanity over it, and why the universe is finally letting the masks fall off, one desperate confrontation at a time. Number one, they're not defending their story, they're defending their identity. When someone lies about a chosen one, the lie doesn't stay a simple story. It becomes the foundation they stand on. They didn't just talk about you, they used your name to construct a version of themselves that made them look wiser, stronger, more perceptive, or more important than they actually were. The lie became a costume they wore in public, and it held their insecure identity together like cheap glue. Now that people are rethinking what they heard, that glue is melting, and they're fighting to keep themselves from falling apart in front of everyone. This is why they're confronting people so aggressively. It isn't about you at all. It's about the identity they built, using your character as the scapegoat. In their minds, if people stop believing the story they told about you, they become irrelevant. They lose the spotlight. They lose the authority they borrowed. They lose the pity, sympathy, or validation they were getting. Their social status becomes unstable, and the version of themselves they've been performing suddenly feels fake. Because it is. When someone's entire sense of self is propped up by a lie, they panic the moment other people stop clapping for it. They confront people because they're not trying to protect what really happened. They're trying to protect the identity they stitched together from jealousy, insecurity, and fear. They're terrified that without the lie, others will finally see the truth. They were never the wise one, the victim, the protector, or the insider. They were simply someone threatened by your presence and empowered by gossip. That's why their reactions seem exaggerated. That's why they're over-explaining. That's why they're getting louder, angrier, and more dramatic. They're fighting for the survival of a persona, not a fact. And the people they're confronting can feel it. The desperation, the strain, the cracks in the performance. Most of them can't even articulate why their story feels off. They just sense that something is wrong. Your growth is another thing breaking their identity. They lied about who you were, not understanding who you would become. Now the person they described and the person people see today don't match. And that mismatch is exposing the false version of themselves they've been selling. Their behavior is not about proving you wrong. It's about keeping themselves from being seen. Number 2, their confrontation isn't courage. It's survival panic. When they run around confronting people about what they said about you, it looks bold on the surface. It looks like someone who is standing on what they believe. But beneath that loud performance is a deep fear they can't hide anymore. They know their story about you is cracking, and they can feel the shift in people's reactions. That shift is pushing them into panic mode, not bravery. Every conversation they force, every explanation they repeat, every defensive speech they give is coming from someone who knows their lie is collapsing and they're scrambling to keep it alive. People who lie don't panic when the lie is strong. They panic when the environment begins to change. People are seeing your behavior. They're watching how you carry yourself. They're noticing details that never match the story they were told. They're observing how calm you are, how focused you've become, how unbothered you seem. That contrast is tormenting the liar more than anything. They thought their version of you would be the only version people ever knew, but reality is doing the job they prayed it wouldn't do. It's exposing everything they tried to hide. Their panic shows in the way they talk too much. They keep repeating details that don't matter. They drag people into conversations that nobody asked for. They try to sound confident, but their voice shakes. Their sentences circle around themselves, and their frustration keeps slipping through. They're not confronting people to defend truth. They're trying to delay the moment when everyone they manipulated finally realizes they were lied to. It's survival mode. Not survival from you, but survival from embarrassment, exposure, and accountability. They know that once their lie falls apart, they lose the attention, the sympathy, the importance, and the fake authority they gained from speaking on your name. Their entire performance starts to crumble. So they confront not because they're strong, but because they're running out of time. Their lie is drowning and they're splashing wildly, trying to save it from sinking in front of the very people they wanted to impress. Number 3, they're terrified of what people are starting to notice on their own. The real fear your enemies have right now isn't you speaking up. It's other people finally opening their eyes. For a long time, they felt confident because they controlled the storyline. They fed people their version of who you were, and most folks didn't question it. But now, people are paying attention in ways they never expected. They're watching how you act, how you carry yourself, how you treat others, and they're quietly realizing that the story they were told about you doesn't match the person standing in front of them. That silent shift is the reason your name has suddenly become a problem for the ones who lied. This is why they're confronting people so aggressively. They can feel the room changing, People who used to nod along when they talked about you aren't nodding anymore. People who used to believe everything they said are now looking at them with doubt in their eyes. Conversations are shorter, side eyes are sharper. They can sense that trust is slipping away from them and moving toward you, and it eats them alive. Nothing exposes a liar faster than truth that reveals itself naturally. You didn't campaign for anything. You didn't argue. You didn't fight for your reputation. You simply lived, healed, grew, and showed up as yourself. Your life began telling the truth louder than their words ever could. They can't compete with that. They can't control that. And they absolutely can't stop people from thinking for themselves. Their biggest fear is that people are starting to see the cracks, the inconsistencies, the exaggerations, the weird excitement they had when speaking about you. People are replaying those conversations in their heads, and it's dawning on them that something never felt right. They're beginning to realize the problem wasn't you. It was the person who kept bringing you up. So now your enemies are moving frantically, confronting people left and right, trying to force them back into agreement. They're not doing it because they feel bold. They're doing it because they feel the narrative slipping straight through their hands. They're terrified of the truth becoming obvious without you ever saying a word. Number 4, their conscience is so loud, they're trying to outscream it. When people lie about you long enough, the guilt doesn't disappear. It grows legs and follows them everywhere. They can pretend they're confident. They can pretend they're justified. But the truth sits in their chest, like a weight they can't shake off. What you're seeing now isn't anger at the people they're confronting. It's frustration at themselves. Because deep down, they know they crossed a line they can't uncross. They know they created a mess they can't clean up. The voice in their mind hasn't stopped reminding them day after day that they were wrong about you. And the louder that voice gets, the louder they try to be. Their confrontations are not about defending the lie. They're about trying to overpower the guilt. They talk fast, talk loud, talk excessively, because silence snitches on them. Silence forces them to sit with the truth, and the truth is the one thing they can't endure. So they keep pushing conversations, repeating themselves, and throwing in dramatic expressions, as if passion equals accuracy. But passion can't cancel guilt, and they feel it every time they take a breath. Guilt changes how a person behaves. It makes them jittery, inconsistent, overly emotional, and strangely defensive over things that shouldn't even matter. That's why their reactions look exaggerated. That's why their explanations feel forced. Their conscience is pressing them, and they're responding by shouting over it like someone trying to drown out a fire alarm. The more people question them, the louder the alarm becomes. And the louder the alarm becomes, the more aggressively they try to silence it. They're not confronting people because they're sure of themselves. They're confronting people because they're losing the battle within themselves. It's hard to keep pretending when the truth is screaming inside your head. It's hard to stand firm when you know your actions were built on insecurity, jealousy, or spite. Every conversation they force is really an argument with their own conscience, an attempt to convince themselves that they weren't wrong. But no matter what they say or who they confront, that voice inside them is not going away. It's getting louder, heavier, and harder to escape. They're not fighting others, they're fighting the truth they carry within themselves. Number 5, they're not protecting their lie. They're protecting the access they lost. For a lot of people, the privilege of having access to you was something they didn't appreciate until it disappeared. They didn't value your presence, your support, your energy, or the stability you brought into their life. They took everything you offered for granted because they assumed it would always be there. And when you finally stepped back or cut them off, The absence hit them harder than they expected. It wasn't just emotional, it was practical. They lost the benefits, the influence, the comfort, the attention, and the security they quietly relied on. Losing you felt like losing a power source they never admitted they were plugged into. Instead of taking responsibility and admitting they mishandled the relationship, they chose the easy route. Blame. They couldn't say, "I had a good thing and I ruined it." Their pride wouldn't let them confess, "I mistreated someone who genuinely cared." So they flipped the story. They began telling people things about you to justify the separation. It wasn't about truth. It was about saving face. They needed others to believe you were the problem so they wouldn't look like the person who ruined a perfectly good connection. Now they're confronting people because their version of events is losing stability. People are side-eyeing the story. People are remembering how well you treated them. People are noticing the pattern, how the same person who once bragged about knowing you suddenly turned you into an enemy the moment the door closed. That inconsistency is making them nervous, and the more nervous they get, the more aggressively they try to defend the lie they created. Their confrontations are not about protecting the false narrative. They're about protecting their pride. Losing you was a blow they've never fully recovered from, so they disguise their embarrassment with stories. They confront people because it hurts their ego to admit they were cut off for a reason. It hurts them to acknowledge that you walked away from their chaos with your dignity intact. The lie isn't what they're fighting for. They're fighting to hide the truth that you were the valuable one all along, and they were the one who misused the access. Number 6, they're fighting a ghost version of you they created. The person they keep describing, defending, and arguing about isn't even you. It's a distorted version of you they built out of jealousy, insecurity, and their own unresolved issues. They created a ghost version of you because the real you was too inconvenient for their narrative. The real you was kind, focused, quiet, resilient, and minding your business. That didn't give them anything to work with. That didn't justify their behavior. That didn't make them look good. So they invented a shadow version, a puppet they could point at and say, "See? That's why I acted like that." Now the funny part is that they're fighting harder than ever, but all their energy is directed at defending something that never existed. They're explaining, clarifying, and arguing over a character they made up in their own mind. When they confront people, they're not defending you or the truth. They're defending the storyline they created to make themselves feel superior, important, or justified. Every time they speak on your name, the puppet gets bigger, but so does the gap between the puppet and reality. That gap is starting to embarrass them. As people observe you more closely, they see a mismatch between who you truly are and the ghost version being described. The qualities they said you had don't align with your behavior. The attitude they claimed you carried doesn't match your energy. The intentions they accused you of don't fit the way you show up in life. And that disconnect is exposing them more than anything else. They look like someone arguing passionately about a movie no one has ever seen. That's why their confrontations come across as desperate and over the top. They're trying to keep the ghost alive because if the puppet falls apart, they lose the excuse they've been hiding behind. They lose the role they fashioned for themselves, the martyr, the victim, the wise judge, the person who knew you best. Without the puppet, their entire emotional performance collapses. The truth is simple. They never knew you, they only knew their insecurities. And instead of healing themselves, they projected those insecurities onto a fake version of you. Now they're fighting to keep that fake version alive, even as everyone around them begins to see that the ghost they built has nothing to do with the real you. Number 7, they're realizing too late that people respect you more than they expected. The biggest shock hitting the people who lied about you is how much quiet respect you actually carry. They genuinely believed they could talk about you casually, carelessly, and without consequences because they assumed you had no real influence. They mistook your humility for weakness, your silence for insignificance, and your calm nature for lack of impact. They treated your name like something they could drag around freely, not realizing you had a level of weight and credibility that didn't need defending or announcing. It just existed. As time passed, people began to see you for themselves, and that changed everything. The same individuals your enemies tried to recruit into their smear campaign are now starting to push back. They're defending you in rooms you've never stepped into. They're shutting down the lies with simple observations like, "That doesn't sound like them," or "I've never seen them act that way." These small but powerful moments of doubt are rattling the ones who lied about you because they never expected the crowd to challenge them. They expected blind agreement, not resistance. And that resistance is growing. People are noticing your consistency, your kindness, your grace, your work ethic, or your quiet strength. They're comparing the version of you they see with the version they were told. And the two don't match at all. That mismatch is exposing your enemies without you saying a single word. Their stories sound shaky now. Their confidence is fading. Their behavior looks suspicious. Meanwhile, your name is repairing itself naturally simply because the truth fits you better than any lie ever could. What really frightens them is that your reputation is rising while theirs is sinking. They feel the shift. The balance of credibility is tilting away from them and toward you. They see people observing you with new respect, and they can't control it. That loss of control terrifies them because it proves something they never wanted to admit. You were never disposable. You were never irrelevant. You were never someone they could just tear apart and walk away from. Your presence carries weight. Your character speaks loud enough without explanation. Now their deception is being exposed simply by the way people naturally gravitate back to the truth. Number 8. They thought smearing you would be a one-time event. They didn't expect an ongoing investigation. When they first lied about you, they assumed it would be simple. They thought they could drop a story, walk away, and everyone would swallow it without asking for details. In their mind, it was supposed to be a quick emotional hit, a moment where they got to play the victim, gain attention, or justify their behavior. What they didn't consider was that lies don't stay still. Lies move. Lies grow. Lies create timelines that have to be maintained. And the moment they told that first story about you, they trapped themselves in a cycle of continuous explanations. Now they're facing something they didn't prepare for. People are revisiting the story. People are remembering bits and pieces. People are asking follow-up questions. The same individuals who once nodded along are now curious about the missing details, the small inconsistencies, the strange exaggerations, the things that didn't quite match your character. Every new question is pulling another thread, and the lie they threw into the world years or months ago is unraveling in their hands. This is why they're confronting people so aggressively now. They can sense that their story is being audited. They feel the pressure of having to repeat the lie, reform the lie, reshape the lie, and convince people the lie is still solid, even when it's falling apart. It's exhausting them. They didn't realize that once you lie about someone, you become responsible for keeping that lie alive every single day. You have to remember what you said, Who you said it to, how you said it, and why you said it. And the moment one detail slips, everything collapses. People around them are not stupid. They're observant. They're revisiting those old conversations and noticing how many parts never added up. They're checking facts, comparing notes, and silently questioning the storyteller's behavior. Your enemies didn't expect anyone to pay attention. They didn't expect people to connect dots. They didn't expect an ongoing investigation. And now the weight of maintaining that false narrative is wearing them down. Their confrontation isn't confidence. It's fatigue. They're tired of chasing their own story, tired of patching the holes, tired of trying to outrun the truth they created with their own mouth. The lie is demanding energy they no longer have, and the truth is catching up fast. Number 9, they're confronting people because their own followers are waking up. And that's their worst fear coming true. They never prepared for the moment when the very minds they manipulated would begin to recalibrate. They assumed influence was permanent. They assumed impressions were irreversible. They assumed their words carried more authority than your lived truth. They assumed wrong. What's happening now is a spiritual whiplash in their camp. People who once nodded along are suddenly experiencing clarity, and clarity is rebellion to a liar. Some of their former believers have started privately repenting to the universe, feeling embarrassed that they ever took someone else's bitterness as truth. Others are connecting dots they previously ignored. A few, the brave ones, are openly questioning the narrative and refusing to participate in the smear campaign any longer. And that is what's driving your opponents into confrontation mode. They feel betrayed, not by you, but by the people they believed they controlled. Their illusion of influence is cracking, and instead of facing the truth, they're trying to drag everyone back into the shadows with them. That's why they're pulling people aside, demanding explanations, interrogating conversations, and trying to monitor alliances. This isn't just gossip collapsing. This is power returning to the rightful owner, you. Because when someone lies about a person who's spiritually authentic, the lie can only survive as long as people refuse to think. But the moment people start thinking, the lie starves. Their panic is proof the collective is awakening. Their confrontations are proof their story never had roots. And the shifting loyalty around them, that's the universe correcting the record, without you ever needing to lift a finger. Number 10, they're trying to prove you're dangerous, because they need a justification for why they feel threatened by you. They were never trying to warn others about you. They were trying to rationalize their own insecurity. Everything they said about you was a mirror they refused to look into. They didn't call you intimidating because you posed a threat. They called you intimidating because your presence exposed the parts of themselves they've spent years hiding from. They labeled you problematic, not because you created problems, but because your authenticity disrupted their ecosystem of denial. Your existence forced them to confront their own inconsistency, so they rebranded their discomfort as your danger. Now, they've run into an unexpected problem. The people they warned aren't seeing the monster they advertised, and that scares them more than anything else. So they're scrambling. They're trying to manufacture the danger they claimed you represented, through confrontations, accusations, exaggerated stories, and emotional theatrics. They're desperate to create evidence after the fact because the lie they planted is no longer sprouting in other people's minds. What you're witnessing isn't hostility. It's a cover-up of their own emotional exposure. If others don't perceive you as dangerous, then their entire narrative collapses. And when their narrative collapses, so does the facade that protected their ego. Their fear was never about you. It was about being seen next to you and being revealed by contrast. That's why they're working overtime to prove you're a threat. It's not about your actions. It's about what your existence reflects back at them. Their accusations were never warnings. They were confessions. And the truth is finally catching up with them. Number 11. They're not afraid. You'll tell your side. They're afraid you'll never speak. Your silence didn't weaken their narrative. It annihilated the backbone of it. They weren't scared of what you might reveal. They were terrified of what your refusal to participate would expose about them. They built an entire storyline, assuming you'd step into the ring. They practiced their counter-arguments, polished their victim act, rehearsed their outrage, and prepared for the spectacle of defending themselves against you. But you didn't show up, and that's the one outcome they never prepared for. Your lack of response stripped them of the fuel their story needed to survive. They needed your voice, not to hear you, but to twist, misquote, exaggerate, and weaponize it. They needed you to react so they could point and say, "See, that's the problem." When you gave them nothing, the script they wrote turned into dead air, and the spotlight they tried to shine on you swung back onto them. Now they're scrambling because the chaos they promised, everyone never arrived. People are noticing the contradiction. If you are as loud, dramatic, or dangerous as they said, why are you the quiet one? Why aren't you lashing out, correcting, defending, or retaliating? That absence of reaction forces others to look deeper, and what they're finding doesn't match the story. Your silence didn't create mystery. It created discomfort for them. It exposed the fact that their narrative cannot stand on its own. It revealed who really needed drama to survive. It cornered them with their own lie, because a story without an opponent collapses under its own weight. They're not afraid you'll finally speak up. They're afraid you'll stay quiet forever, because if you never respond, the burden of proof sits entirely on them, and they know they don't have any. Without your participation, they can't twist anything, build momentum, or control the direction of the story. Your silence didn't just ruin their plan. It reduced their entire performance to a one-person show nobody is clapping for. That's why they're pushing, confronting, stirring, desperately trying to resurrect a conflict you've already walked away from. They're not trying to shut you up. They're trying to provoke you into talking. Your silence is not power. It's their downfall. Number 12. Their confrontations reveal. They lied with emotion, not evidence. When someone has the truth, they present it calmly because truth doesn't need theatrics. But when someone is fabricating, exaggerating, or hiding what really happened, they depend on emotional heat to fill the gaps. That's exactly what's happening with the people who lied about you. Their confrontations are loud because their story is hollow. They're not defending a fact. They're defending a performance they've already committed to. They told their lies with emotion, and now they're trying to maintain the lie the same way. Notice how they raise their voice, throw in dramatic pauses, sprinkle in pity, anger, fake outrage, or trembling frustration. It's not about clarity. It's about manipulation. Emotional chaos is their tool because if they slow down, if they get calm, if they speak plainly, everyone will see the cracks. Their narrative only makes sense when it's rushed, heated, or dripping with intensity. The irony is that the louder they get, the more suspicious people become. You can only cry, "I swear," or "you don't understand," so many times before people start wondering why the story needs that much passion. Real truth stands still. Lies need motion. Real truth sits comfortably in simple sentences. Lies need a whole dramatic monologue to feel convincing. Their confrontations aren't about proving you did something wrong. They're about proving they didn't make something up, even though deep down they know they did. They lied emotionally, impulsively, maybe out of envy or fear or insecurity, and now they're trapped in the performance. Every time someone questions the story, they panic a little more because questions require answers, and answers require evidence, something they never had from the beginning. So instead of evidence, they bring energy. Instead of clarity, they bring chaos. Instead of details, they bring drama. The confrontation is not to expose you, it's to distract from the fact that the story they created cannot survive a calm conversation. They're not fighting to protect the truth. They're fighting to keep the lie from collapsing the moment someone asks, "But what exactly happened?" Their volume isn't confidence. It's fear dressed up as passion. Number 13. They didn't expect you to grow into someone. Their lies can't stick to anymore. They crafted their stories about you during a season when you were still finding yourself. Back when you were quieter, unsure, more forgiving, more accessible, easier to misrepresent. They spoke on your name as if you would stay frozen in that old frame forever. Their lies depended on you remaining unchanged. They depended on you staying small enough for the narrative to make sense, wounded enough for the accusations to feel believable, and unaware enough to never rise above the picture they painted. But you didn't stay who you were. You evolved, spiritually, emotionally, mentally. You did the inner work. You healed. You got clearer, wiser, more grounded, more powerful in the way only life's pressure can forge. And now the version of you walking around today makes their old stories look ridiculous. You outgrew the shape of the lie, and the lie doesn't fit the upgraded you. That shift alone is exposing them more than anything you could ever say. People who once believed the rumors are now seeing for themselves that the person being described and the person standing in front of them are not the same. There's a maturity in your energy now, a steadiness in your presence, a confidence in your actions that their narrative simply cannot attach itself to. The transformation created distance, not just between you and them, but between the truth and their fiction. And this is what's driving their confrontations. They're trying to drag people back into a version of the past that no longer exists. They're hoping others will mentally time travel to when you were still vulnerable enough for their story to stick. But the present day you exposes their deception effortlessly. Your growth is the contradiction they can't overcome. They never planned for your evolution, so now they have to wrestle with the consequences of underestimating you. You didn't refute their lies. You outgrew them. You didn't fight back. You transformed. And that transformation is the loudest disproof they never saw coming. They wanted you stuck. Instead, you leveled up. And the upgraded you made their old script useless. Number 14. The more they defend their story, the more they reveal their obsession with you. Their confrontations are not about truth, clarity, or justice. They're about fixation. They've made you the centerpiece of a story that they can't stop retelling because you are the emotion behind it, not the event. The moment someone questions them, even casually, something snaps inside them. They jump into defense mode with a speed and intensity that exposes what's really going on. They're not protecting a narrative. They're protecting an obsession. People are starting to notice the pattern. Your name comes up too easily. Their reactions are too emotional. Their explanations are too detailed for someone who claims to be over it. Every time they speak on you, they reveal another layer of insecurity they've tried to disguise as concern or righteousness. What they hoped would make you look questionable is making them look consumed. When someone is genuinely telling the truth, they don't hover over the topic like it's a shrine. They don't revisit it constantly. They don't get agitated at the slightest pushback. They state the facts and move on. But this person can't move on because the story was never about what happened. It was about how you made them feel. Jealousy, envy, intimidation, regret, guilt, rejection. Whichever emotion they buried under the lie is rising every time the lie is challenged. And the people around them are finally asking the one question that strips everything bare. Why do you care this much? That question is lethal to a person who built an entire emotional identity around portraying you negatively. It shows others what they never wanted anyone to see, that the story didn't come from truth, it came from personal obsession. It makes the crowd realize that this level of emotional investment is not normal. It exposes the lie without you having to lift a finger. Their confrontations aren't proving your guilt, they're proving their fixation. The more they talk, the clearer it becomes that you live in their mind far more than they would ever admit. And that, more than anything they said about you, is what's destroying their credibility. What you've witnessed throughout this journey is not a series of random confrontations. It's the unraveling of a narrative that was never strong enough to survive your evolution. Every argument they start, every person they chase down, every dramatic defense they perform is another crack in the mask they tried to wear. They are fighting timelines, old versions of you, and the ghosts of their own insecurities. They are wrestling not with your reality, but with the fragile illusion they created to make themselves feel bigger, safer, or justified. Your absence ruined their strategy. Your growth destroyed their script. Your transformation exposed their obsession. You didn't have to clap back. You didn't need to give explanations. You didn't need to correct anyone. Your elevation became the evidence. Your stability became the contradiction. Your silence became the mirror they can't look into without remembering what they did and who they pretended to be. And now their confrontations are becoming confessions. Their volume is becoming the proof. Their desperation is becoming the reveal. People are waking up. They're seeing the mismatch between who you are now and who you were rumored to be. They're noticing how hard others fight to maintain a lie that no longer has anywhere to stick. They're questioning motives, patterns, and emotional intensity. They're starting to piece together the truth without your involvement. And that's what terrifies the ones who tried to bury your name. This entire situation has shown one powerful, unshakable truth. You don't need to defend yourself when life itself becomes your defender. Your character, your growth, your energy, your evolution, they're doing the work for you. And while others may still be caught in the storm of their own guilt and obsession, you've moved into a chapter where your name is being restored in rooms you didn't even know your story entered. The lie is collapsing, the truth is surfacing, and your legacy is rising, untouched. Thank you for watching, Chosen One. If this message spoke to your spirit, make sure you subscribe to the channel, like the video, leave a comment, and share this with someone who needs this clarity today. Your support helps this message reach more people who are on their own journey of awakening and elevation. Stay blessed, stay aligned, and stay rising. God bless you.